Yeah. We all ready? Good evening. I call this meeting to order at 6:19 p.m. The following directors are present tonight. Director Stepp, Director Ramirez, Director Torres, Director Teitler, myself, Director Kuhlenberg, meaning we have a quorum. Thank you to our interpreter, Karen. Karen, would you please share the interpretation instructions with our participants? And then we can turn on the interpretation function.
Hi, this is Sharon. Thank you for joining us. In order to ensure all families are able to access this meeting in the preferred language, we are providing simultaneous interpretation in English and Spanish today. Please press the globe at the bottom of your computer screen and select the preferred language. If you are watching on a phone, press the three dots at the bottom right of your screen and then select the preferred language. If you choose Spanish, be sure to select the mute original audio option. And gracias por acompañarnos. Para garantizar que todas las familias puedan acceder a esta reunión en su idioma preferida, hoy estamos proporcionando interpretación simultánea en inglés y español. Por favor, presione el globo en la parte inferior de la pantalla de su ordenador y seleccione su idioma preferida. Si está viendo en un teléfono, junte los tres puntos en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla y luego seleccione su idioma preferida. Si elige español, asegúrese de seleccionar la opción silenciar audio original. Gracias.
Thank you. The first business in order is the approval of the agenda. Directors, are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Directors, you've just approved the agenda as presented. Our next agenda item is our opening celebrations and updates by our superintendent, Dr. Rodriguez.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to begin by thanking our staff, our students, parents, and community members, including our local law enforcement agencies, for their quick response to our district-wide secure this morning. I completely understand how disorienting and frightening these situations can be, especially for the schools that were inadvertently asked to go into a lockdown. I want to reassure each of you that our staff and students were completely safe during this entire period. And just thanks again to our local heroes for their quick responses to the threats. Next, I have 4 quick survey related updates. So the first is just a thank you to everyone who took our delayed start exploration survey. Based on the feedback that we received, we are planning to continue with our current approach of either operating as normal or calling a snow day. The second is just wanted to thank everyone who responded to our calendar survey. Based on the feedback that we received for that, we are also planning to keep most of the calendar as is, but we are exploring the possibility of professional days for teachers. More to come on that possible change via our interest-based bargaining subcommittee that's looking at the teacher workload. And then 3 is the results from our student perception survey. As many folks refer to it as Panorama, were debriefed with leaders recently in preparation for leading similar debriefs at their schools. This is a survey that students take to give feedback to their teachers on their experience. And overall, we experienced positive gains from 21 to 22, and we are approaching pre-pandemic favorability rates. However, school belonging continues to be an area of improvement among our secondary students in particular. And then finally, I want to invite everyone to take the superintendent evaluation survey that was sent out by the Board of Education recently. I think it closes on Friday, but it's an anonymous survey and it will be very helpful to inform the evaluation that the board does of me, and I welcome the feedback. Next, not survey related, I completed all of the staff appreciation lunches right before break. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined me for those. Everyone was very generous with their feedback about what we must preserve and where we must innovate, which ultimately informed the recommendations that I'm going to share with everyone here in a few minutes. I also had the opportunity to attend the fall capstone presentation at Glenwood Springs High School right before the break, and I was just blown away by the work our students have completed. We had some students who produced music, a student who built a guitar, one student who designed a 3D printer made the 3D printer and then also created some prototypes of action figures with the 3D printer that they built. And it's just really amazing the work that those students did. And I actually want to use this as a plug for any parents of seniors or seniors themselves who have yet to complete their capstone, that we're really looking forward to see what you come up with. I also had the opportunity to attend my first 2 graduations as superintendent this fall. And I just want to give a shout out to our students who graduated. We had one who completed the Ready for the World program in December, and we also had 8 students who graduated from Bridges High School. So congratulations to those 9 students. And then last week, we welcomed Dr. Lisa Roy, who's the executive director of the new Colorado Department of Early Education, to Riverview School as part of a Valley-wide tour that was hosted by Valley Settlement. I was very proud to highlight the program at Riverview as superintendent, as many of you know, as a parent as well. And I just want to thank the entire team over there. And then lastly, I am excited to just share with you all, I'll be out of the office tomorrow and Friday, going to Denver to participate in the Rural Superintendent Academy that I'm a part of, that's hosted by the Colorado Education Initiative. So thank you. That concludes my updates and celebrations.
Thank you. The next business in order is a presentation from Dr. Rodriguez on his first 100 days as superintendent.
Hey, long time no see. Hopefully you're able to see the slides. But I want to kick off. Some of you may have seen this, but I took the opportunity this week to write my column in the Post-Independent as also a reflection of basically the first semester as superintendent, the first 100+ days, some of the things that I set out to do, and some of the things I learned, and ultimately the recommendations that I'm making for our school district. And so I want to start by just sharing out when I was a candidate, I talked a bit about context sensitive design, and as many of you know and have come to learn, it's a decision-making process that's used in architecture, and specifically was used to build a highway through Glenwood Canyon. And the idea is thinking about what must be preserved, the natural beauty of the canyon, for example, but also it was once deemed impossible to build a highway through a canyon. So it also took a degree of innovation, creativity, and I thought it was serendipitous and thought I would adopt a similar approach to my leadership and introduction to the school district. First, really focusing on listening and learning, and ultimately listening and learning about what are the things that are going well in our school district that we must preserve, as well as what are the things that aren't going so well that we need to be innovators on or do differently. And so those are sort of the guiding questions that I posed to our students, to our staff, to parents, to community members when I got the opportunity to interact with them. And so another thing that I want to share is, as I thought about this entire school year, but the first 100 days in particular, I set out to accomplish these 5 things. The first was to nourish a trusting relationship with each of you, our board of directors, but also to ensure a strong transition and leadership with this clear focus on accelerating achievement for our students, implementing listening and learning sessions in various ways with various stakeholders in Glenwood Springs, Carbondale, and Basalt, respectively. And also really just listening to learn about the values, the norms, the expectations, the culture of those 3 places that are very unique. And also when those three places come together to form our school district. And then ultimately continuing that focus on narrowing the difference in achievement between our student subgroups, in particular, our Latinx students and white students, our emergent bilingual students and and students with special education plans and those who don't, but ultimately increasing the achievement of all students. So I shared in the post-independent column that I felt like I had mostly successfully accomplished those goals. Of course, we're still working on the last one, and we will continue working on the last one for many years to come. Some of the key actions that I took during those first 6 months include, of course, meeting with our leadership teams, conducting small group meetings with staff in various ways, of course, reviewing our current strategic plan and the implementation of it. And actually, one of the things that I hate to say to folks when they ask, hey, can we meet one-on-one, is that no, I can't always meet one-on-one because we have a pretty large community, right? We have 1,000 employees almost that work in the Roaring Fork schools, and unfortunately, time doesn't permit me to have meaningful one-on-ones with everybody, and that's true with students, and that's true with staff and parents as well. But we did try to deliberately organize some specific one-on-ones with identified stakeholders, folks that you all recommended that I connect with, but also folks that staff recommended I connect with, and so forth. And then, of course, analyzing our academic achievement and growth data as they became available. Very proud that visited every school community multiple times, including our 2 district authorized charter schools. This is a side note. I hope that many of you have already had the opportunity to view me rolling around the high school at Glenwood Springs High School, and I blame that on the relationship that I have with the students. So I sort of feel like if the student council didn't know who I was, I could have walked in there, they would have left me alone. But the student council were the ones who organized snow coming. So as soon as I walked in the gym, they called me out on the microphone. I didn't know what I was getting myself into and just walked straight onto the court. As I was walking to the suit, figured out, they want me to get in the suit. So, I said, do I need to take off my shoes? They said, yeah. And I think you should take off your jacket too. And so I'm very proud of, I think in particular, building relationships with students across the high schools. And then, of course, evaluating the supports we have for schools. We had some successful community forums, some that were less successful or less well attended, but an opportunity to hear from folks. And then ultimately learning how our current structure supports our vision and beginning instructional rounds at campuses. All of the things that I've heard, that I've seen in interactions with staff, students, parents, community members, inform the ideas and recommendations that I want to share with you all. Really quickly, in terms of some demographics, we are a bit smaller today as a school district than we were about 5 years ago. So when you look at our toddler programs, which didn't really exist in the same way that they do today, back in 17, 18, to today, and then specifically looking at K through 12th grade, we're about 400 students less enrolled today, even though we now have more students in the toddler program and in the preschool program. The majority of our students are Black, Indigenous, or people of color, about 60% of them identifying that way, but the largest subgroup being Hispanic or Latinx with 55.6%. 41% of our students are white. That's our second largest subgroup. And then this is some employee data that we have. So we have about 877 full-time employees. That doesn't include our guest teachers or coaches. 23% of them are Hispanic or Latinx. And when you look at certified versus classified, there's a disparity there where only about 10% of our certified staff are Hispanic or Latinx, where about 41% of our classified staff identify that way. This is some performance data. The colors at the top are the school performance framework for each school in our community. And there's a few just quick notes here. As you can see, some of our schools had downward motion. Some remained flat, which was good, right? So you've got Two Rivers or Basalt Elementary that went up and actually moved the performance band to green or, meeting expectations. And then you have some that remain the same Two Rivers is an example of one that remained the same, that was meeting expectations. Basalt is an example of one that grew. And so there's some positive growth in our performance data, but overall as a school district, our improvement plan decreased. And these are some data, of course. School performance framework and district performance framework are made up primarily by CMAS for 3rd through 8th graders and by PSAT for high schools. And so when we look at our CMAS data, 3rd through 8th grade students all together for ELA, we saw a decrease of 7% from 2019 data, the last pre-pandemic year that we gain data. And then I also wanted to highlight that difference of achievement between Latinx students and white students in our district. As you can see, for CMAS and in language arts in particular, there's a 38% difference. Math is very similar, but the difference is smaller, but the performance is lower. So math is actually, I think, in tougher shape in some respects. This next slide is high school. So when we look at our PSAT data, we had decrease at all grade levels and all content areas when compared to 2019. And then again, there's some good news there and some successes, but the difference in achievement between our white students and our Latinx students in high school is more staggering, I think, than 3rd through 8th grade. So you could see 57% difference, for example, for evidence-based reading and writing between white students and Latinx students. And then this slide is just a really quick glance. So you can look at 3rd grade. These are apples to oranges. These are different cohorts of 3rd graders over time, beginning with the first year of data, 2015, to current. And of course, there's a downward trend here. Same is true for 7th grade. I picked 3rd and 7th grade because they did take English language arts in 2021. Not all grade levels did. And then our graduation rates, there's some things to be celebrated here. So we've got our best of graduation rate, 7-year at 89.3% in 2022. And then also you could see here that Roaring Fork schools achieved higher graduation rates than the state at 4-year, 5-year, and 7-year rates in 2022. So that's some good news. And just want to highlight that the green bar are Roaring Fork schools. I have a few more slides here on graduation. As you can see here, we maintain this pattern of outperforming the state averages for on-time graduation. That's students who complete in 4 years. And then we also experienced a slight decrease from 2021 to 22 for on-time graduation rate. So these are our own schools. Again, the green bar is Roaring Fork. We're looking at 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. We landed at 85.2% for on-time graduation last year. These data were just made available to us a couple of weeks ago. And then this next slide is Roaring Fork schools compared to Colorado. This is the 4-year rate, and it's by student subgroup. So although to the previous slide, 85% is pretty good. Of course, we want it to be 100%. But when you look at this next slide, comparing the student subgroups, is where we see some disparity. So as you can see, for non-minority students, white students, the on-time graduation rate last year was 96%. But for our students who are identified as minority students, it was 77%. So that's, of course, one of those differences that we want to narrow. So based on these data, based on conversations with stakeholders throughout this year, these are some of the next steps that I want to propose to all of you and to our community. First is we'll continue updating our policies. So as you know, this is one of the levers that you all have as board members, and a statute requirement that you have as board members, but also one of the levers that I can use to lead our school district. And one of the examples I include here is graduation requirements. So as you all know, we updated it in the fall, and it's been updated every year for the last 4 years. I'd like for us to update it again this spring, but this time with the intent that we won't update it again for at least 4 years. That we have an incoming class of ninth graders that have some consistency in what's expected of them for the next 4 years. I'm also proposing this acceleration plan. We will share more information with our community. We've already engaged with stakeholders about some of the elements of it, including things like developing a district-wide MTSS process. But the acceleration plan is our way of expediting the narrowing in the difference in achievement between subgroups of students and elevating the achievement of all students pretty quickly. There's some resources, some structures and systems that we need to put into place for that to happen. And we're excited to share more information with our community about that. I think at our next board meeting, I believe that's when we're planning for you all to take some action on that. We have to continue to prioritize housing. That's something that it's really interesting because you would think it's like an adult thing, right? Where we have to be able to provide a place for our amazing educators, members of our team to work and do the really important work of educating our children. But I heard about it actually from every stakeholder group, right? So at my very first advisory council meeting at Basalt High School, they shared with me that over the years, and these are juniors and seniors, that they had seen a lot of their great teachers who they loved, had relationships with, were really effective, leave and teach, for example, at Glenwood Springs High School. So again, one of our schools, I'm glad that we were able to keep them in district, but because it's closer to Rifle where they live, right, than to have to commute to Basalt from Rifle. And this is something that students brought up and have brought up repeatedly, that they see as a need to retain and to attract high quality folks in their classrooms. Of course, our teachers are sharing the same. We've heard from teachers who live in teacher housing that it's great. Let's extend my lease. Let's build more of these. Can we create more pathways to ownership? And then, of course, our parents as well, where they're seeing a similar need that students see, that, we have still a few classrooms throughout the district, not many, but a few that we haven't been able to hire folks to. And so housing needs to be a continued priority for us, and figuring out solutions to attract and retain teachers and educators and everybody who works in our system. The portrait of a graduate, I already talked a little bit about, but I think one of the plugs that I want to make sure to say here, when I think of the strategic planning process that we knew we were going to engage in next school year 14, sorry, I did that earlier, 2023-24. I'm sort of thinking of it as a 12-month process that begins now. That this semester, I would like for us to begin to develop the portrait of a graduate, as well as to work with community and co-creating district core values. I believe those two levers will be essential in informing the strategic planning process that happens this fall. My hope is that all of those things happen between now and a year from now. And then next January, February, we're bringing to you all a strategic plan for 24 and beyond that might include having to hire, or, might include changes in calendar, might include these other things that we can begin planning for the following school year around this time next year. And of course, this spring also identifying our instructional priorities and beginning the UIP process for next year. The one thing that would be different in the UIP process that we wouldn't be able to do until next fall are our results. But I think some of the work that we can due in the UIP can begin this spring and into the summer. So we can get clarity of how we're going to spend our time next year and in terms of accelerating achievement for all students. And that's it. That's in a nutshell. And there's many things that we've heard and that we've learned that aren't addressed here that might not be able to be addressed until we get to the strategic planning process. So I have heard from community things like very clearly, every community wants there to be a language learning opportunity in their school. That's something that I think needs to happen in the strategic planning process next year, because it involves big shifts, programmatic changes potentially that might impact the following school year. I'm saying that because I also want folks to know even some of those things that maybe aren't captured here in next steps are being captured, that we are working towards now and will continue to in the next year.
On behalf of the board, thank you for putting this together. Thank you for your work thus far. And I think we all look forward to hopefully actualizing some of those next steps and getting updates on where that's going. Are we doing a board discussion at this point? We don't have it in our agenda. Yes, okay. So we'll go through 2 minutes for each board member, 5 minutes of open discussion, and we will start with Director Torres.
Well, I share the appreciation for not only putting this together to share with us, but also being a part of getting regular updates. I really feel as though we've been continuously informed on your progress and what you're involved in, as well as giving us an opportunity to provide feedback that we're hearing from stakeholders in the community, as well as parents with kids in our schools. So that level of communication, I think, goes a long way. And it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Director Tytler?
I would say a lot of the same, that I appreciate your connection that you've had with the community, how you've gotten yourself out there, how you've been a good listener and taking in what it is that is working well and what needs to be changed. I am excited about the next steps that we're working on. I think we've made a lot of forward progress. I still have some questions about the acceleration plan and especially towards programming. I'm a little bit concerned about how we're going to be closing the achievement gap with that acceleration plan. I understand and I agree that from what I've seen on the acceleration plan, that it would improve learning for all students, and I'm in agreement with that, and I think it's a good thing. I don't see where the needs for closing the achievement gap are in that plan, and I would like to have further conversation about that.
Thank you.
Director Stepp?
Yeah, thank you for the update. It's a lot. And thank you for tackling it. So as you were talking, I was like writing down questions and I'm going to put in the board tracker. But one of the things when you're talking about graduation rates, and it shows the difference between the subgroups of students, but I didn't see like the change per subgroup. Is it like an overall change year to year, but not the subgroup? So kind of digging down, and that's probably somewhere, and I just have to look for it. But one of the questions that I would like to address is just because we're graduating at such a high rate and it's above the state, does that mean that they are college or career ready? We hope so, and when we do the portrait of a graduate,
That's right.
but I don't think those two are the same thing. So yeah, I wrote down a bunch of questions that I'll put in the board tracker to follow up on, but that was just one of the things I was thinking of. Yeah, data. We have a great data team, and yeah. Oh, one other thing I was thinking of is, and this actually came up in a meeting I was in yesterday, is what do we track any kind of data after they graduate, like where they go, if they're working or went to a 4-year institution, or they're not doing any, that type of, and I didn't know the answer to that, so. I said
Yeah,
I would-
we actually don't for all students. We do only for pre-collegiate students. We do have an opportunity to get those data for past cohorts as well as moving forward. And I think that's an important part of the portrait of a graduate, where we do need to discern not just that they graduate, but actually that they're prepared to go out into the world and are ready for college or career.
Right, because it's one thing to look at these test scores and see how we're doing to these one measurement of success, but are these things that we're doing actually making a difference in their pathway? And it was actually somebody from pre-collegiate that said, it's really hard to track down those students.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Ramirez.
I just want to echo what my colleagues have shared tonight. Thank you for this concerted effort to provide us and our community good data that is clear and is really telling the story of where our district is at right now. I also, to my colleague, to Director Stepp's point of, how well they're doing as they leave our district. One of my concerns is just looking at our seniors that are leaving, quote, tested at 38% math. It's very low. And so I do think there has to be more, a bigger concerted effort to make sure that our students are leaving our schools really prepared and getting aligned to our mission and to really what our hope is at this district, which is that all students leave prepared for the world. So I applaud your guys' effort on creating this, you, Superintendent Dr. Rodriguez, for making an effort to be present and visible and listen to the community. I think has already made an impact. So thank you so much for that work. And I look forward to all of the next steps we get to be a part of.
Thank you.
I know I opened with giving thanks, but again, I'd like to echo everything that everyone said. I'd also like to add that I do agree with Director Tytler that I would like to see more of a focus. Looking at the graduation rates, just, 1 out of 5 of our male students aren't graduating, which is a tough pill to swallow. And Director Ramirez has brought up multiple times, but it's male Latino students, and how can we assist them? How can we help? What can we do? What else can we do? And so I think this is a great first step, identifying the problems, putting it out there, getting out there and understanding what's going on. So again, thank you. We look forward to next steps, the next report. We now have 5 minutes of open discussion as a board.
I was just going to make a remark about us doing the graduation requirements again. So thank you for listing that on your top priority.
I agree. And I really appreciate the distinction that Director Stepp made, and looking at some data like graduation rates versus career and college ready are, 2 different things, and how we look at that and look at the partnerships we have. Are there, internship opportunities in our communities where these businesses are struggling to find employees? Well, we have high schoolers that already live here that maybe just need some kind of engagement to get them connected to career opportunities or internships to give them a better sense of what they're interested in, that may keep them engaged to get to the finish line, and not only get to the finish line, but to be prepared to be successful in high opportunity employment. We don't want to say, oh, well, if 90% of our graduates go into the employment field, but they're all making minimum wage, were we really successful? We want to get them into careers that are high opportunity, where they can live here, where they can raise a family, and otherwise be contributing members of our community. So I think looking at both those things could be done in a lot of these different accelerated paths, pathway opportunities, partnerships, all of it. So
I guess I would just add that the district core values, I'm glad you put it on here. I think that's going to be really important for us moving forward. I know it's something we practiced a long time ago, and it'll be good for us to go back to that. And I think for this board and for boards moving forward, it'll be good to have that as a foundation for, you know, how we do strategic priorities moving forward. So thanks for adding that.
I guess I would just like to add, and it wasn't maybe brought up too much, but the instructional priorities, I think they're very important priorities that have been identified, and I very much agree with those as being 3 priorities that we can work towards. And I think within all of those, there are pathways for us to look at making sure that everybody improves in their academics. And I think those all 3 have ways to help the closing of the achievement gap. And I especially am happy about the direction we have as a district taken towards culturally responsiveness, and not necessarily teaching, which it says there, but just as general, that we put equity at the forefront of a lot of the things that we've worked towards. And I very much applaud that.
Anything else? Again, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we would welcome members of the public who have signed up to address the board, but this evening there are 0 speakers signed up. Members of the public who wish to share their views with the board may also do so in writing at any time. For this evening's public comment, we have received 0 comments. The next business in order is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes routine personnel, minutes from our previous board meeting, approval of proposed policies GB, DG, IG, and JLCD on final reading, board regulation JKD/JKE-R, and repeal of current policies IA, EEACA, and EEBA. Board members, are there any items that you would like to pull off the consent agenda for a separate discussion and vote? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Director Ramirez, do you have an item you'd like to pull? Okay.
I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Call to vote?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
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 Directors, you've just approved the consent agenda. It's now time for board discussion. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share any comments. We will begin with Director Tyler.
I don't have any comment. Thank you.
Director Stepp,
I have no comments at this time.
Director Ramirez,
I was just gonna thank the transportation team. I don't remember what your title is, Ms. Cole. And why do I want to say director? Because it's not director.
Chief.
Chief, thank you.
There you
Oh
go.
my gosh, Chief Cole, Chief Park, and Chief Davlin for the policies that we have just approved. I think that all of them are aligned to our mission, and so I appreciate the concerted effort we've been doing to make sure that we are updating. So thank you.
No
Director
comment.
Torres. And I would just echo what Director Ramirez says. I am super appreciative of all the work put into policy updates. And I think that we've finally hit a cadence of getting a large number of policies done on a pretty accelerated schedule. So thank you. We now have 5 minutes of open discussion. If anyone has anything else to add. Okay. All right, the next business in order is discussion on 2 instructional policies. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions. Chief Park, as you all know, is unfortunately not here this evening.
Zoom. So if you have questions for her, she's available.
Thank you. All right, so we will jump in to comments and questions, and we will begin with Director Stepp. All right, I keep forgetting to.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Director Ramirez.
The only questions I had on these policies was, I know it came up during our policy committee. First of all, thank you, Chief Park, for being with us tonight. I'm really sorry you were joining, but I'm really grateful. My only question was on the very last sentence that we talk about reporting to the board. I know we had a discussion about this.
In which policy? Sorry.
On both of them, I'm
both
sorry,
of them,
IKE and ILBC. And so I just wanted to follow up on if this was, in Chief Park's opinion, the best language and in regards to the timing in which we should, as a board, be receiving data for us to be able to act on resources or supports for the schools. And so I just wanted to make sure I asked the question tonight.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I actually do think that the timing is right, particularly for policy IKE on promotion retention, annual reports at the end of the year when decisions are made, I think is the right time. And then for the data on early literacy and reading comprehension, those reports I believe come out in mid-year in the fall, and so would provide enough time, I think, to either approve resources to be shepherded in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
Director Torres.
I have no questions.
Director Tytler.
Thank you. I did have a few questions. My first question, at the end of IKE, it says the district administration will develop regulations to implement this policy. Have we developed such regulations yet?
No.
We have not, because but will once the policy is approved.
Okay. And then also I have a question in the first paragraph. It says teachers will identify students early in the school year who are not making adequate progress towards achieving the district's academic standards, and in collaboration with the building leader may choose to implement learning or academic interventions. Do we have an idea of how this will be done, or is this something that's been done in the past, and how has that been done?
It has varied in the past, but one of the reasons we put the language in there is because you may identify students who would benefit from academic interventions, but may prioritize particular students over the other. And so it might be a combination of whether it's after school tutoring or being in an intervention group or receiving other kinds of supports. What our hope is that with the regulation is to outline a little more clearly what the criteria might be for choosing or prioritizing students.
And so this will be something that should be more like streamlined and more consistent across the district then, or are we still going to be like doing it more school to school?
Ideally, there would be some consistency in implementation of programming, at least by levels.
Great, thank you. And my last question was the part talking about emergent bilinguals. So if their English language proficiency is less than proficient, they're not to be held back according to this. What kind of determination are we using for emergent bilinguals to determine what it is that they need when we can't be looking at it when it has to be based so much on their language proficiency?
I just want to make sure I understand the question. Are you referencing the the paragraph that is fourth from the bottom?
Yes, the one that talks about the Office of Civil Rights, but that part, but overall, just the idea also of how that relates to how do we make these determinations of interventions, and how do we know if the interventions are language based, or how do we know if the interventions are academic based?
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. I think with any, as we would with anything else, we would use a body of evidence to determine what is the appropriate support that a student might need. And so whether they're just demonstrating a need for more supports in the English, either the English language development or English literacy, if there's something similar seen in their Spanish literacy classes as well. Based also on their access levels or the WIDA can-do descriptors, I think it's helpful to reference those to determine what is appropriate to expect from an emerging bilingual student, depending on the level that they're in.
And what about for the schools that don't have the Spanish literacy? What is our steps that we're doing to determine that when there isn't Spanish language instruction?
I think there's a lot more reliance on something like the WIDA can-do descriptors, which all of schools do have, and actually with their emerging bilingual students are able to then, depending on the level that they're in, determine what is appropriate to expect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Park, thank you for being on. I don't have any further questions. I think that we went through these policies pretty in depth during policy committee, and hopefully we can finalize these and regulations can be drafted. You know, 5 minutes for board discussion.
I just had a question to make sure I understood the connection between this as well. So in the accelerated plan, we saw the just-in-time intervention that ties in to that line that we read. Assessment systems, teachers will assess the teaching and learning. Wait, that's not the one I was looking for. Sorry. Where they identify students. I just saw and I looked away. Oh, implement learning or academic interventions for each such student if deemed appropriate. Is that tying together with the just-in-time interventions? Like we're saying here, it's a policy for you to have intervention strategies to ensure students are meeting standards, and the accelerated plan really just basically follows what this policy is saying.
You got it.
Perfect. I made those two connections and I was like, it sounds like we're doing what we're right. Perfect. That was just a clarifying point for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other board discussion on policies IKE or ILBC? All right. Thank you.
Chief Park, thank you for being on.
Thank you. And I apologize for not being there in person.
No apologies necessary. Thank you. All right, the next business in order is discussion on 3 transportation policies.
Actually, I don't know. I didn't realize we were doing I thought we were doing only my bad. I'm sorry. I thought we were only talking about IKE there. I didn't realize we were talking about ILBC at the same time, but maybe I'm too late.
If Chief Park's still on, yeah, we've got a few minutes left, so jump in.
Thank you.
I'm still on.
Thank you. On the part about the assessments and read plans, where it says that the assessment of the student indicates that the student has a significant reading deficiency, a read plan must be developed for the student in accordance with this policy's accompanying regulation. Is this the same way that we're assessing that through the WIDA standards then? Or how are we assessing this if an emerging bilingual students are lower than like beginner or intermediate levels in English? So if it's a read plan that say they're supposed to be academically on level, how are we addressing their academic on levelness if we're not able to do it because of language?
They are taking the DIBELS and EDEL assessment. And so based on the outcomes of that, whatever their assessment was in their L1, a determination on whether they need additional support or have a significant reading deficiency is what the indicator is.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you. Did you say depending upon their L1, so that DIBELS is in their L1?
Yeah, the EDEL, IDEL.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's just for K through 3 students. They still have both.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on that one?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief Park.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on. The next business in order is discussion on 3 transportation policies. Policies EEAG, EEAEAA, EEAFB. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions, and we will begin with Director Stepp.
I don't
Jared
have,
Rains. Good to see you
hi,
again.
Jared.
Good to see you.
I don't have any questions for you at this time.
Thanks.
Director Ramirez.
I'm really sad you guys are not matching.
We'll try harder.
I wanted to thank you guys for the updates on the policies. I appreciate that, my concerns were heard and it's reflected on the policy. So thank you for that. And I actually don't think I have any questions because I was just really happy to see that.
Yeah.
What I hoped you guys would put on here was on here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Director Torres.
Yes, thank you for being here. I just had a question to clarify on policy EEAFB, use of vehicles by community groups. Question on the second paragraph where it says nonprofit organizations whose purposes align with our district's mission and strategic goals.
Yes.
How it just seems like that's an interesting area to qualify. So if an organization that has a group of citizens that are 65 and older are not, let's say, doing it for a community, I don't know, I'm thinking bingo comes to my mind. I don't know why it just does. It doesn't necessarily align with district's mission. So would that be like, no, we're not. Just help me understand that point.
It's and or. So it could be a group of seniors. They don't have to be aligned to our strategic mission. Like that's a CASB recommendation that we make our resources available to a group of seniors. For other nonprofit organizations, we matched what kind of our facilities use policy, where we look for them to have an educational focus or to be aligned with our strategic goals. Does that answer that question?
It does. I just wanted to get clarity on, groups. Obviously, we're
Mhm.
we're also serving our community.
Yes.
And I just thought of a group of citizens that may want to be getting together that didn't have something that aligns with our
Right,
district's mission. We would say no.
right.
But it sounds like that or,
Yes.
and thank you for clarifying. And there's an
Get a lot
approval
of expense
process.
to transport for weddings, for example. We're not doing that, but we will, support us, a senior citizen, event if that's necessary.
Yeah, community engagement,
Yeah.
winning bingo. I'd go.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Director Teitler.
I have 2 questions. The first one is on EEAG, the student transportation and private vehicles. In paragraph 2, it shows that the superintendent or designee is crossed out in that first part of it. But then at the end of that line in the yellow says, and other factors as determined necessary by the superintendent or designee, should that superintendent part be changed? It seems like that
Yeah.
was from the beginning was crossed out to administrator.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it kind of got put back in there again. Yeah. Yeah, we could clean that up a little bit. We spent a lot of time just kind of thinking through how do we have 2-person integrity in a situation like this? How do we have 2 people that know? And putting in the right language to allow it to be the right people that were available. So yeah, I think we could rewrite that a little bit.
Great. I think that's just an oversight. And then my other question is on EEAFB, the use of vehicles by community groups. In the last paragraph, it says regulations for community use of school vehicles must be developed by the administration and approved by the board. Have we developed those or approved those?
Not yet. All right.
And is that something, I guess, then that's in the works to do? I just feel if we're approving this.
There are regulations that were previously approved associated with this policy that are they're posted online.
The-
Okay.
I don't know how long ago, but we
Right.
have, there is a file at least,
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
February 1999.
Recently.
Could use an update.
So would that go hand in hand with this to like approve those at the same time? Like, will we be seeing them before we do the final draft, or we'll just imagine that will happen at some point?
I think we'll,
Okay, great.
I have no further questions on these policies. I think we got into all of them during policy committee. So we will jump to 5 minutes of open discussion. If anyone has anything to add.
Yeah, I actually did remember one thing that I wanted to clarify, especially for the regulations for EAG. I meant to ask about a regulation for accountability for, which I'm assuming is the exceptional cases. Well, actually, I don't think it would be under that. I'm just wondering like how often, and this is probably the regulation, would either the transportation director or the superintendent be reviewing to see, one, that the people transporting students, actually that we do have their insurance on file.
Mhm.
And two, that you know, we don't have like multiple, like, to my concern, you know, one person transporting
Right.
students over and over again. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that up as a hopefully regulation that will be created alongside this.
I think that's an important point. That would be in regulation. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right.
I do
Okay.
have, it's just, does the district have like a driver? I know we train bus drivers and everything, but like anybody that drives for the district, is there like a driver training? Like, do we get a, like, is it an insurance requirement or something if we're driving district vehicles or?
Right. So, depending on the use of that vehicle, what they're using it for, we have different levels of training and records check. We always do a motor vehicle records check in order to make sure that our people are insurable before we put them in any kind of district vehicle. So that could be, you know, our trucks that are, you know, on the grounds team or something like that, you know, much less, and then have a higher level of training for those that are transporting students. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Does that happen a lot where people use their own vehicle to transport
No.
students? No.
No, we have so many vehicles and so many,
Options.
there's so many other options, you know, this absolutely has to be a last resort.
Thanks.
I would appreciate that this policy be what, I mean, obviously, we're updating all of our policies, but maybe in our newsletter, maybe in something to go out to make sure that for those teachers that or administrators or whatever, that they're aware
Right.
that this policy has been updated and that we must have their driver's license, motor vehicle record, and insurance card on file before they're transporting any student off campus.
Yeah, understood. Makes sense.
Any other discussion on the transportation policies?
Thanks, Janet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next business in order is action on policy GBGL regarding staff victim leave. And Chief Davlin is coming up. Is there a motion?
I move that the board approve JKD, JKE-R, the regulation outlining the procedures for, oh, wait, sorry. Oh, wait. It's not staff victim leave?
It- Yeah. we're
But
on
that's
staff
not the
victim
right-
leave.
I
It
was
just-
like,
It just wasn't updated, so.
GBL.
GBGL.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Is there a motion?
I'll read it again. I move that the board approve GBGL staff victim leave as presented on second reading.
I second.
It's now time for board discussion. Each board member will have 2 minutes to share comments or ask questions. We'll begin with Director Ramirez.
Question. Thank you.
Director Torres,
No questions. Thank you so much for, I see, just updates from our last recommendations.
Director Titler,
I would like to ask if we could perhaps amend the last paragraph that says, except in cases of imminent danger to the health or safety of the employee, employees seeking victim leave must provide as much advance notice to the district as possible, as well as appropriate documentation. I feel just saying only in imminent danger, I feel there's a lot that goes into somebody who's asking for victim leave, and there's a lot swirling in their mind at that point. And I feel like saying, except in cases of imminent danger, that to apply for this leave, they must have all this advance notice. I just think it's a little harsh, this reading, and that maybe we could soften that somehow with language saying something about it is hoped that, or I just find that that language is too defining for my opinion. And it feels like for a person who is struggling in that situation, that can be over burdensome to them.
Where possible, employees are asked to.
I think where possible, employees are asked to would be great, and I would be comfortable with that.
Yeah, because I think when they're in that situation, it's the last thing they're thinking about is, ooh, I need to get permission for, it's like they're in crisis mode and they need to. Angie, can you talk into the mic? Sorry.
Sure, sorry. I think
Sorry.
a good reminder too is our payroll runs a full month behind. So if you have an incident today, you have at least 30 days before you'd be penalized if you were out of leave for that incident. So there's a built-in time period that's long.
Director Titler, did you have anything else on?
No,
Okay.
I would just like to hear the opinion of others, or
We're just
we
doing
have the
that.
discussion coming up,
Yeah.
so.
Director Stepp,
I don't have any questions.
Director Ramirez. Oh, sorry.
I don't have any questions.
No, I don't have any further questions either, so we can move into discussion. To your point, Director Taylor, I agree the language seems a bit harsh, but I think we already indicated above that we're automatically granting it regardless. So I'm not opposed to a change in language. I think the update that Kelsey just made makes sense to me.
I would be comfortable with that.
I think we're all in agreement. Thank you, Chief Devlin. Oh, vote, yes. All right. Call to vote.
Director Stepp,
Aye.
Director Ramirez,
Aye.
Director Kruger,
Aye.
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 Directors, you just approved policy GBGL on second read of 3. All right, the next business in order is board reports and comments. We will begin with Director Torres. During this time, we'll also, if you can bring up any future agenda items per our discussion 2 weeks ago, we'll talk through those now. So Director Torres.
Sorry, let me get back to so I will be attending the, let me find it really quick. I apologize. The Health Benefits Advisory Council, which I was sitting on prior, which is looking at our benefits package that Chief Devlin is exploring and consulting with staff and employees. And so that is coming up. The other area as far as future board agenda items. I present, yes, no, not yet.
I don't think that you had submitted one. There are some listed on the agenda, so I don't think you had submitted one via,
Oh, the board tracker.
yes. And so
So
the
we'll
hope
put
is
it on
they'll
the board
submit it via
tracker.
the board tracker and then discuss them at the following board meeting.
Perfect. So I'll give you an update with other updates. The Roaring Fork School Foundation later. That's it. I don't have anything to report on that. 'Cause I
Oh,
haven't
okay.
met since
Okay, I
then.
thought you were skipping
That's the only
over it.
other thing I'm sitting on and there's nothing to report.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Director Tyler.
I would just like to mention that through IBB, we're continuing to work on the calendar. As Dr. Rodriguez mentioned, we're trying to come up with some kind of schedule that helps meld the trimesters with semesters and how work time for teachers are in those two different systems. And we're trying to figure out a way where we can maybe combine work time and data days as a flip-flop type thing, depending on which school, which level system the person is involved with. Also, as far as the future topic suggestions, I really would like to look into the board perhaps having a strategic priority related to the achievement gap. I know that over last summer, we were told that the board could come up with a strategic initiative for the board. And I believe it's imperative that we have this discussion now. I know we've talked about how this discussion could come as we change the strategic initiatives, but that's like a year and a half out. And I feel like it is an important time for us to discuss that now. We keep getting data presented to us about the achievement gap between our different students. But we continue to have no strategic initiative to specifically address this achievement gap. And I think it would be important that we have some kind of board discussion concerning this. And I think that goes hand in hand also with what we are doing as a board, as a district with our emergent bilingual students in programming. I think we can't look at how we can close the achievement gap if we're not looking at some kind of programming that specifically addresses the different needs of different students, where we have tended in the past to focus on achievement and make an achievement for everyone. And I don't disagree that we need to look at achievement increasing for everyone. I think it is important that we look at what kind of programming would specifically cater towards the students who are having these difficulties with the achievement.
And so when you're proposing this as a future agenda item, do you see it as like a work session item where the board is discussing adding this strategic priority? Do you want specific data presented from district staff related to what that would mean, how that would impact the work that they're doing? Or do you have anything more specific on what you're hoping?
I would like
looks like?
to, I don't feel like we need the data to show us that we have this achievement gap. I think we've gotten plenty of that.
I was
data.
thinking more along the lines of like budgetary impacts, how this looks in terms of directing how staff allocates their work time, things of that nature. I agree with you. We don't need any more academic data on this point.
I think we could get some information on what type of different programming is happening at different schools, what kind of consistency, why are we choosing to do one type of programming at one type of school versus not trying to do that type of program at another school. I would like to see if Dr. Rodriguez has any input on what he think would be the most effective type of programming from his point of view on what would help close this achievement gap. And I would like us to look at what can be done, especially as we talk about one of the 3 priorities we're hoping for the next year, which includes early literacy, and what we could do at an early literacy level that would address this specifically, and not just having a one size fits all at early literacy. And I understand that we have ELL, but ELL is separate. I'm sorry, ESL, ELL. acronym choose. I think we need to look at what is the actual literacy focus and what is the programming for literacy that addresses the different needs of our different populations.
So it sounds like this might be better suited as a work session.
I would agree.
Item where we could delve into more specifics.
I think that would be a great place to start.
Any other comments on this proposed item? Are we in agreement that we want to see something like this at a work session? Yes, okay. So we're all in agreement that we'd like to see something like this at a future work session. Good. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tyler. Director Stepp.
Just FYI on a couple of things. I think I told you before about the Aspen Community Foundation is leading a group that's called Career Exploration Network, which includes the Aspen Community Foundation, Co-Venture, the Colorado River BOCES, CareerWise, the Workforce Center, CMC, somebody else there. Oh, Youth Entity. And we just created strategic goals for the year of what we're trying to do. And so the next step is to make sure that there's a representative from each school district in these conversations. But it's all about creating those pathways. That's where it came up with the data, like what data is out there, what are we tracking, how do we know, how our students are doing, that type of thing. How many people are in internships? How many people are we'll, as we start implementing more CTE programs, we'll have more data on that. The other conversation is around the CTE programs and getting them certified at the state level. And the two programs are going to be carpentry, construction, and computer science and coding, those pathways, which we have both of those pathways into CMC. And I'm also, I just came to the meeting, I was late in a conversation at the state, and they are tasked with creating stackable credentials. And this was just the first meeting. So it's kind of like, are we looking at like high school entry level, like 2 years or certificates? Or are we looking at 2 year to 4 year or 4 year to masters to, like there are people from Lockheed Martin on this call. And so it's really interesting that Colorado Department of Higher Ed is leading this, but this was House Bill. I just learned this today. Senate Bill 22-192 is tasked with creating stackable credentials in healthcare, behavioral health, education, cybersecurity, and programming. So I'm going to advocate for that pathway between K-12 and higher ed. And then one more conversation that's happening is around our relationship with the Colorado River BOCES. And we have a meeting on the 10th with them to talk more about that vision and everything. And then we're also, we have a concurrent enrollment meeting. We're creating a summit with all the principals and counselors and our coordinators, and looking at creating a vision with that too. So lots of different conversations going on. Oh, and I visited my first school the other day. I went to Sopers Elementary and had a great tour and talk with them. And so that's kind of exciting. I've contacted the other two principals. We just haven't scheduled a time yet.
Excellent. Thank you. Director Ramirez.
I have two things that I would like on a future agenda, which one, I think is something that I've been pretty concerned about and would like to have a discussion. I'm not sure if we need current data on this, although I feel like with the data that we have, there should already be flags up on how we can help support students and schools. But the dropout rates is something that I really want to make sure is part of our conversation when we're talking about not just graduation rates, but and not just, you know, that we have students who are graduating ready for the world, but that we're making sure that all students are graduating is really important. So I would really appreciate it if we could make time in the near future to talk about that. And then the other thing I wanted to request was a proclamation. I'm so grateful that our team has made a concerted effort to include some of our, you know, in the spirit of building school culture and building community. I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss the mark on a proclamation for Black History Month. So please let me know how to support with that. I want to make sure that it happens. And then I just had, I don't know if it's a question, but to the points that you just made of the Aspen Community Foundation, is that, are they going to ask the district staff or they're going to ask a board member, or are you representing?
It'll probably be Ben, district staff, as he's representing the whole initiative around CTE. I'm guessing, but yeah, so it would be as district staff member.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that's great. And I really am excited that we'll be able to participate in that. So, and then I guess the only other thing I wanted to mention is that it went public this week that Director Kuhlenberg made School Board Partners Cohort 5. And so I just wanted to give you kudos for
Thank you.
that work, because I know they celebrated it being the biggest cohort that they've ever had, but also the most diverse, and that they really were spanning so many students, and I'm just really excited for you. So congratulations.
Thank you. I'm continuing with work on IBB committee right now, where our focus is around staff leave. And so that's primarily what we're focused on currently. We have another meeting coming up next week, and then check in on the 15th. Yes. So I have that. I just started work with School Board Partners, which I'm excited about. It seems to offer a lot of great PD throughout the year, and then also an opportunity for mentoring and the potential for deeper learning depending on how involved you are. So yeah, last night we had our first session, and Director Ramirez is actually acting as a mentor now for other School Board Partner students, cohort members. What do you call them? Fellows. There you go. So that was exciting to see her on the other side of the Zoom. The agenda item that I had asked for was around the 23-24 calendar after the survey had closed. It sounds like some decisions have already been made, but it was something that I think we had discussed as a board last year during calendar approval, was that we would revisit it after the survey was conducted. I feel like I keep talking into this thing and then looking away. Sorry. So I don't know if you all feel that we need to have a discussion around it, if we're prepared to, you know, I
I
think
could
it's
give you a
open
little
for
bit
us.
of an update on that.
That'd be
we-
great. Yeah.
We had a meeting yesterday about the calendar. We took a look at the data from the responses from the surveys, and there was really no conclusive data that seemed to make us want to change how the calendar was. There was questions about whether the break was too long. Did the break start too early? Did the break end too late? And there was never really any sway one way or the other on how people answered. Just as many people said it started too early as it said it ended too late, and vice versa. And so there didn't seem to be any direction from that survey that would tell us how to do anything different. There was a little bit of from the parents that it was hard for the childcare part of it, but still that number was relatively small when you broke it out. And then we also tried to get in touch with the neighboring districts, and it seems like at least Aspen next year is matching our calendar. And whether or not, and District 16 is, and Parachute also. And whether or not RE2 is still up in the air, but probably not. But it seems like that would be better for our valley next year as far as that later date. And then also how the New Year's time comes, it sort of makes it even more difficult not to extend there for next year. And then we also fixed a couple oversights that we saw in the calendar that were wrong in the calendar that was put out. And so we changed some dates, not really times, but just there were some numerical errors in that.
Were they oversights that on the calendar that the board approved last year? Like, does it need to come back before the board for approval?
It was
Changes
more, I
been
think,
made?
just a clerical error, like there was a 21 where a 20 was supposed to be
Okay,
on
so
the
it's not
calendar, and
actual dates.
it wasn't actual dates of changing start dates, end dates, vacation dates. It was just, they were marked wrong on the calendar.
Okay,
Can I ask how many people responded to the survey?
There was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000, just under 1,000. There was something like 930 responses in English and 30 responses in Spanish.
But I think if I can add to your question, if the current subcommittee on the workload subcommittee does have recommendations for changing
Mhm.
any days, for example, removing a student contact day and making that a PD day, then
Right.
it would come to you all as a board to take action on to approve or not.
Right. So any changes would have to come back to us to approve.
And we are looking at trying to possibly ask for some changes. And so we would bring that back to the board.
My only comment around the other comment around the calendar is I'm happy to hear that we're working on alignment of major breaks with other districts because I heard a lot of complaints around that. I think having younger kids, my peers were hit a little harder with that in the childcare arena. And so if we're making changes to our calendar, I would encourage us as a board to consider getting on the same calendar schedule or calendar approval schedule as our surrounding districts so that we're no longer doing it in opposite years. Because I know the position we were in last year is they had approved for 2 years and then they were in their second year and we were getting into our first. And it seems like if we're making changes again this year, it's an opportunity to align.
I agree.
I guess I would also add that I think it's gonna be really important to notify community partners. I know that was a big concern for us last year about how some of our partners weren't gonna have funding or staff to be able to implement their childcare programming during this longer break. And so I think we just need to make a concerted effort to like push that information out as soon as possible, because I do know like in Glenwood, that was also a strain. I obviously would love to see more representation from our larger demographic in all of our surveys. I don't know how we fix that, but I do, I think when something so important like the calendar, like there has to be a bigger concerted effort moving forward that we make sure it's really telling of the whole valley in its whole, especially because we know that season is the busiest for tourism in Aspen and all of those areas where a lot of our families are working. And I think there's this fear of kids home alone that really concerns me when we're spreading a longer time period. So.
Well, and I would add to that too, real quick, that we could make sure that we're also reaching out to partners that provide, I mean, we look towards partnerships that provide summer camps. Those organizations could explore options to do camps during those breaks. I mean, we know the rec center has those and they fill, like if you're not registering your kiddo when it opens, they're full. So also exploring if we're going to have these long breaks, could we look to those partners who have, I don't know, camps or extracurricular kind of focused opportunities so that they do have some place to go rather than staying at home.
I think along those same lines, if we're reaching out to partners, also having the discussion about them using our facilities, which I know is what some surrounding districts do. They have camps that come in and use facilities within the schools to offer care and entertainment and a safe place to be. My other update.
Can I
me
just
is-
say one more to this
Yeah.
before another update?
Yeah, sure.
Director Ramirez, to answer a little bit your question, and I don't know that this answers it, but even though it was like 930 to 30, that doesn't necessarily mean that that was the demographic by ethnicity, but it was by language. And so the language number could have been very different than the other number, but still it does seem like a stark difference.
Yeah, and I would just say to that, that I also recognize that we have a lot of families who have either just arrived or who like their primary language is Spanish.
I agree.
So I hear what you're saying and I totally agree. And I also wish that we made bigger effort to get a larger portion of our monolingual Spanish speakers represented in all of our surveys.
Very much agreed.
Sorry, Director Tyler. My last update is within my schools within Basalt, I learned last week that there was consideration of a youth center going in across from Basalt High School. There's a development going in there. The space was supposed to be for childcare, but they didn't have anybody that responded to the RFP to run childcare there. So per the ordinance, it goes back to the town council to determine another beneficial use for the community. And so town staff has already spoken to BEF and to the Aspen Youth Center. There was a work session meeting last night where they discussed it further and council directed them to pursue either the youth center or continue with the childcare route if they could find a provider. So I just thought that that was something that you all should know is happening potentially and just, being discussed and be aware of it. All right. We will now move on to our final agenda item, appreciations, and we'll begin with Director Tytler.
I would like to just take a jump back a few weeks. A couple weeks ago, we said thank you for the work on the math adoption committee for the K-5 adoption, and we thanked Michael Logan and Stacy Park, Chief Park, about all the work that they put in. But I just want to make sure that we also don't ignore the other teachers and leaders of that group who put in the great amount of work that was the backloading for all the work that was presented to us by Chief Park and Michael Logan. So I would like to give a thanks and a shout out to the Math Adoption Committee, who are Carolyn Glasgow from GSES, Holly McGee from Riverview, Jackie Powers and Sarah Meserve from CRES, Paula Matheson from SES, Noel Gannett from BES, and Sasha Logan as the math content lead from CRES. So a thank you to them.
Director Stepp.
I want to also appreciate the board and Board Appreciation Month. It's an honor to work with you all. And I want to appreciate Chief Cole, the Chief Bean. They are directing this conversation around the Colorado River BOCES, and it's not easy, and there's a lot of different tentacles. And so you guys are trying to keep that moving forward, and it's appreciated. Thanks.
Director Ramirez.
I want to take a sec to appreciate our team who was hands-on today. Everybody involved, all our administrators, all our SROs, our team, our core team. Thank you guys for being cool under such a crazy event that took place today. These moments, I think, in the climate of our nation today can be super scary, and knowing as a board member that you guys were leading all of that effort really gives you peace of mind as a parent and as a board member. So thank you guys for that work. I know it has so many quick thinking moments where you just have to respond, but I'm so glad you guys are part of the team. So And then I just wanted to appreciate all the administrators that I get to work with in the schools. And just really excited that we've set out our schools so that we can be better board members and be able to build community at a local level. So super excited. Go Demons, go Grizzlies, and go Cougars.
Director Torres.
Well, I'm so happy because I had two. So ditto to Director Ramirez. Thank you and appreciation. I 100% agree. In addition to that, I want to say thank you to the policy committee. Reviewing these policies is so much easier when there's obviously been a lot of work already done. And it's nice to read language that it's like, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Like that is what makes it clear, makes it more concise. And sometimes it's one of those, I just have an interesting question because otherwise the edits that were already done made it so much better. So thank you for that. I think that is very reflective when we read through these, and it's very appreciated. So thank you.
Yeah, and the staff put in a ton of work on the policies. So thank you to every one of you that has spent a lot of time combing over this language. So I wanted to call out Principal Waller and Assistant Principal Marisol at BES, because so much of what we talk about is the creation of the climate and students feeling a sense of belonging, the creation of community within schools. My oldest two kids are both in elementary there, and so I have the most interaction with them on a daily basis, but not a day goes by where Grant isn't out front in his orange vest directing traffic and Marisol isn't standing there with a big smile on her face, welcoming students in. So I really think that in these past few weeks, it's become apparent to me how they exude some of those qualities of leadership that I think are really important. And just the impact that leadership has on students, on parents, on the sense of community. That's really, really evident at BES right now. So I'm super grateful for them and all that they do, not only for my kids and for me as a parent, but for all that they do for everyone within our district and all of their students. Mr. Waller emailed me this week to tell me that in my son's kindergarten class that the letters of the week were B and O because his nickname is Bo. So he's like, it's Bo week. And so it's little things like that I think go a really long way to creating that sense of belonging and community that we all know are so important when we're talking about bringing our students up and accelerating learning. So I wanted to call them out this week. And of course, echoing Director Ramirez, thank you all for all of your work today. I know that was stressful. All right, if there is no further business and no objection, this meeting will be adjourned. It is 7:52 p.m. I'm sorry.